Hey everybody, nice to see you all. Those at home and those in the meeting room and sitting in the Zendo, thank you for participating in this session. When I talked to Roshi about it, or texted him to be precise, about whether he had any hints about what he'd like me to talk about, he said, I'll include something about the heart in our practice. And I had a number of ideas going around in my head, but that just clicked with some things I was thinking about. That the heart in our practice matters a lot to me. Matters a lot in general, although it might not always look exactly that way. Something I've heard a lot from those who don't take to Zen is it can feel cold, or even people think that about Buddhism in general. They see that it looks kind of formal and maybe austere, and they come in for a sitting and everyone's silent. Nobody claps you on the back and says, "Hey, so glad you're here, glad you made it, dude." Of course, we're better at GMZC and the Abbey. We're friendly to newcomers, but still, it's not that kind of enthusiasm you'd get from a more evangelical setting, right? We're not bubbly. Zen, you can't say Zen is bubbly, can you? Hey, have you heard the good news? Buddha says everybody can get enlightened. We're not like that, right? Americans can come in and feel they haven't been sufficiently welcomed. They're left to figure many things out for themselves. Maybe they're doing it wrong. Like I say, we do it better at the Abbey now, and it's not near as austere as the ancient stories, where if we wanted to train at the Abbey, the Roshis would make us sit out in the snow for a week, right, before they'd let us through the gate. In some places, they'd even give newcomers beatings and drive them away, and they'd have to come back again and again to show their merit, to show they were tough enough for the practice. There's some truth in you having to be tough for the practice. You got to have some chutzpah. That's what Daido Roshi used to say, chutzpah. You need a little chutzpah. But, sometimes people manifest their chutzpah in different ways. But still, if you do much reading of ancient stories, there's a lot of hitting and slapping and nose tweaking and even cutting off of fingers, even arms. There's a koan that involves the breaking of a leg. And of course, it's all meant to be expedient means. After all, if getting hit or having your leg broken provokes enlightenment, maybe it's worth it, right? So I guess that's the attitude. But of course, we do better than that now. We've gotten a little bit softer, right? Considerably softer. And it still works. But still, there's the long hours, there's sitting through pain. Let's just say, when I came to the practice, it didn't seem warm and fuzzy. But if you face it head on, Zen practice isn't any harder than life, is it? Life dishes it out in much the same way. Right? I think they're maybe about equivalent, which is probably as it should be. You have a tough practice that makes you able to deal with the toughness of life. But still, it's funny, I think sometimes that we talk about taking refuge in the practice, and, the refuge is a little bit like a boat sinking, so you take a lifeboat, but the lifeboat's still in the stormy seas and you're getting thrashed around, right? It's a little bit like that. It's a little bit, it's refuge for sure, but, it's still kind of stormy, right, at times. But if you scratch beneath the surface, though, I learned over time that you had to, if you look, there was plenty of warmth. I know those of us who've practiced for a long time feel the heart in the practice, even if it's not like on the sleeves of our black robes, right? We don't wear our hearts on our sleeves, but it's there. nevertheless, I couldn't talk to my early teachers, Maizumi or Daido, about emotions. They just say, just go back to the breath, right? And I mean, I was a hippie. I came to practice. I was all, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. I was amazed that we had to sit for 12 hours and our bodies would hurt. And we had to get up early in the morning and it was tough. And, you know, but it was a bit of an adjustment. I didn't find it as warm and fuzzy as maybe I expected, having been in the hippie movement and the human potential movement. And, but it's funny you couldn't say that Maizumi Roshi was gushy, but there's stories of him, many stories of him crying when a student brought their emotional pain to him. There's this one story of a practitioner I knew. The story is actually a couple of stories in my book, One Bird, One Stone, about Maizumi involve his warmth, his heart, his compassion. There was one story about a practitioner who had been a dancer and her career was ended because she was pushed in front of a subway train and actually she lost part of one foot. And that's probably what drove her to practice. Like many of us, some form of suffering or a big setback that often brings us to practice, makes us, for me, it was certainly the case. It was, big health issues that I didn't understand made me rather desperate. And I thought, well, let's do about the toughest thing that I can think of to do. So I chose Zen, of course. But it worked. But about the dancer, there's a story. She went into Maizumi and she was very self-conscious about her foot, her disfigured foot. So she'd always wear a sock on that foot. And she went into Maizumi Roshi and asked a neutral question about practice. And Maizumi Roshi said, oh, let's not talk about that. Tell me what happened to your foot. And so the dancer started telling her the story and telling him the story. And eventually she felt comfortable enough that she even took off her sock to show Roshi the foot. And of course she started weeping and then she looked up and saw he was weeping too. And that went on for a number of dokusan. She'd come in, she'd try and ask him about practice. He'd say, no, tell me about your accident. Tell me about your foot. And they'd cry together. And until the day came where she just came into dokusan. And because this has been the norm, she just started telling him again about her foot. And he said, oh, no, let's not talk about that. It's time to talk about practice. So eventually they moved on. But there was a lot of, he knew that was in the way. She had to come to some acceptance around that in order to proceed with practice. And then there's a story with Shishin Roshi and Maizumi. Shishin told me when I was doing One Bird, One Stone, where he was doing a sesshin in Mexico with a group in Mexico, and it was in a neighborhood, residential neighborhood, and the neighbor's dog at some point during the sesshin was disturbed with all the extra people being there in the house. It was the house next door, I guess they were sitting in, and it ran out in the street and got run over by a car. And of course, the neighbor was very upset. Maizumi Roshi insisted on holding a service for the dog, saying if we hadn't been there, the dog wouldn't have ran out in the street and it wouldn't have died. So he made the whole sesshin to a service for the dog, and which was very moving and healing for the neighbors who'd lost the dog. So, that's pretty warm stuff, but still I can't say I got a lot of emotional support, in my early years of practice from my first teachers. But our Roshis, of course, are better. They're, you're able to bring up emotions with them, and of course our Roshis are better. We always think our Roshis are the best, don't we? Everybody always thinks their Roshis are the best. But still, if you go back to the question of expedient means, which of course all the slaps and hits were meant to be, I wonder if the ancients ever considered hugs. That's what we do more hugging these days than hitting. Um, Imagine Bodhidharma sitting 9 years in front of the wall, just waiting for somebody who was tough enough to come in and give him a hug, who was emotionally open enough, heart open enough to come in and give him a hug. Wouldn't that be a nice change? Or Rinzai, speak a word of Zen, and instead of I'll give you 30 blows, speak a word of Zen. If you can, I'll give you 30 hugs, and if you can't, I'll give you 30 hugs. It could be. I think there's a koan I might have answered that way. I can't remember which one it was, but I'm pretty sure I answered one that way by giving Shishin Roshi a hug. I can't recommend it to you. I don't know which koan it was, but hey, give it a try, right? It takes boldness, doesn't it, to give somebody a hug sometimes? Of course, a lot of the warmth in Zen comes from the humor, right? It may look tough, but we laugh about things. We laugh a lot, right? There's warmth in laughter. But I want to tell you a little bit about my first visit to Zen Mountain Monastery. Some of you may have heard some of this story before. I can't remember how much I've shared, but I'd met Daido Roshi's first two Dharma heirs, Miyotai and Shugen, at a ZCLA, I think it was 25th anniversary gathering. And by great good fortune, happened to be seated at the same table with them. And I thought, who are these two beings with light bulbs inside their head? Because that's what they seemed like to me. They were so bright, and they were so warm, and they were so open and so clear, funny. I just thought, I like these people. I've got to go check out their monastery. I got to check out what they're doing. And they were very enthusiastic about me coming to visit sometime. And next year I was on the East Coast, and I had just a day. So I set up that to spend the day and the night, go visit Zen Mountain Monastery. It's outside of Woodstock. And the first night, it took me longer to get there and to find the monastery than I expected. And so I came in a little late. I ended up sitting downstairs in the dining hall because I didn't even know where the meditation hall was, where the Zendo was. It was on the second floor. But anyway, Shugen came down afterwards, found me, and gave me a warm welcome and showed me where I could sleep. And I got up the next morning for Zazen. And the Zendo and Zen Mountain Monastery, it's huge and cavernous, and it's big. It's got a intense feel to it, but also it's so big, much bigger than ZCLA, what I was used to. And so I was a little bit like, a little nervous to start with. Also, I'd heard that Daido Roshi could be a real dragon, and I'd never met him. I just heard that he was a kind of, you go to Trumper Mountain and meet the dragon. It was that kind of thing, And then I found out that they were quite dragon-like in the way they practice. They actually shouted in the Zendo. When during the first couple of sittings, if somebody's nose ran and they went to get a tissue, there'd be a monitor would yell, "Let it run!" Because you're in the dampest climate in the world. It's always raining there. I'm sure the monastery building is an old building. I'm sure it's full of mold. Everybody's nose was running in the morning. If everybody started blowing their nose, it would just be a zoo. So we were always instructed, just let it run, And I made for gooey sitting, but you couldn't do anything about it. Or somebody shouted at you. If anybody moved, they'd shout, "Don't move." If anybody's falling asleep, they'd shout, "Wake up!" Really loud. Of course, it made for a crisp atmosphere in the Zendo, but still, I'd never heard that. They weren't doing that at ZCLA at that time where I'd been practicing. And it was later I found out they at the monastery they referred to ZCLA style as it was practiced then as California Zen. A little disparaging, right? Which I have to say I preferred the softer style, especially at first. But then I was sitting, the second period or something, and they called for Dokusan. And what they said was, anybody from out of town, that was the first call, anybody from out of town, the Dokusan line is open. I thought, shite, I thought. I've got to go first. That means me, I've got to go first, right? The problem was nobody told me where the Dokusan line was. And also, I'd been to Dokusan with my Zumi Roshi a lot, but I'd never gone first, so I didn't know the protocol for going first. Not only did I not know where the Dokusan line was, I didn't know where the Dokusan room was. So I got up the way we do in ZCLA. At that time, I was using a sitting bench because it took ages for my legs and hips to open up to where I could sit on a zafu. And I was only a year and a half, 2 years maybe into practice at that point. And so I stood up and was quietly folding up my sitting bench, and the monitor shouts, "Move quickly!" I'm just like, move quickly where? So I look around the zendo, I see a strip of carpet at the back of the zendo. I think, okay, that's the best candidate for where the Dokusan line is. And I run over there. Sure enough, there's a bell at the beginning of the strip of carpet. So I sit down there, bench under me, heart pounding, and I'm holding the little, the protocol of holding the clanger for the bell. And I know you're supposed to clang the bell when you hear the Roshi's bell ring, but was I going to hear the Roshi's bell ring because I was the first one? And I knew the protocol was that you bow at the door with the student coming out, but what do you do if there's no student coming out? Besides, I didn't know where the Dokusan room was, so this strip of carpet was at the back of the zendo, and there was kind of a half wall next to me. And so I could kind of, peer over the half wall and kind of look up and down the hallway on the other side, and I could see 3 different doors. As far as I knew, any of them could be the Dokusan room, and nobody had told me. And then I thought, well, if it is the Dokusan room, and I hear the Roshi's bell, do I open the door? There's nobody coming out. So do I just open the door and bow in the doorway, and then do I go in and bow before the Roshi? And I had no idea. And like I say, there's 3 doors. I don't know if you've ever read the old story, The Lady and the Tiger. It's a famous story that a lot of high school students used to read. There's 3 doors. One's got a beautiful maiden, one's got a tiger. So depending on which door we didn't have. I didn't think there were beautiful maidens behind any of the doors, but I thought there was a tiger behind one. It was my business to face them. So anyway, so sure enough, the Roshi's bell comes, and I think I just got to make a choice. So I stand up, I'm folding on my bench. Again, the monitor shouts, "Move quickly." I'm thinking, move quickly where? So I run into the back hallway, and my best guess for where the Dokusan room is there's a swinging door at the end of the hall. And I thought, okay, it's got to be behind there. But is it directly behind there? Is there another inner door? I didn't know. But in Zen, the best thing is when in doubt, bow, right? So I did a full prostration on the floor, and in front of the swinging door, and the monitor shouts, "No, no, 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 no." And he says, "Chikido, go help him." And Chikido jumps up, runs over, grabs me bodily, thrusts me through the swinging door, opens an inner door inside, flings me through that, and there I am in front of Daido for the first time. And Daido was a big man. He always held the stick, and he had these Old Navy tattoos on his arm. It was very dim and flickering lights from the candles, and it looked like the room felt like it was swimming with samadhi, and the tattoos are crawling around his arms, and I was just, I had no idea what to say to him. Just completely lost it. Anyway, I don't know how I got through. I said something stupid, and he rang the bell, and out I went. Well, then they proceeded to do a service, and they were even shouting each other in the service. Like, is attendant, is that any way to hold the incense, and they were shouting instructions at each other. I thought, this place is no place for me. So I was supposed to stay the whole day, but as soon as the service was over, I went right upstairs. I packed my stuff. I thought, Zen Nazis, I'm getting out of here. I can't take this stuff. I've never been treated like this in my life. I was so offended. And those of you who know me well, um, you may know that I'm famous for not having any sense of direction. So I came out of the dormitory room with my backpack, my sleeping bag, and again, I'm faced with three different doors, and I don't know which one leads down to the outside. So I just choose one. I go down the stairwell, and at the bottom there's a door, and I think, okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm just not even going to say goodbye to anyone. As far as I knew, this was the outside door. I was going to get in my car and just fly to freedom and never come back. So I push open that door, and guess where I am? I'm in the inner office, and and the monks who are in charge of the place are all sitting at their desks, and Shugen is there. Now he's Shugen Roshi. At the time, he was just the senior monk, and Shugen looks up at me and he says, "Oh, you have to leave so soon." His face was so warm, and he came up, he came around the desk, he gave me this tremendous hug, just like I think Rinzai should do. We have to go back and rewrite those old collections of koans. But anyway, he came around and gave me this big warm hug, and he said, "So great to have you here." And it just felt like not only was there a lamp inside of his head, which was visible somehow, but he just had the warmest, most compassionate eyes. I was so confused. I just kind of blubbered something like, "Yeah, something came up. I have to leave early. Sorry." He says, "I hope you'll come back one day." Anyway, I got out and got my car driving away. I was so confused. I was thinking, how do you reconcile that kind of apparent hardness with that incredible warmth that Shugen has? Anybody who's been there and trained there, I don't know what he's like now. It's been some years since I've been there, but he's got this combination, really like Daido had. Daido could be very warm. Daido Roshi could be very warm once you knew him. Eventually, when I went back, I did a lot of training there. Probably if you added it all up, I did years of training, really. I learned to accept it as kind of theatrics. They'd be hard or brusque in the Zendo, which certainly made for a crisp atmosphere. And then the person who yelled at you in the Zendo would be your best friend at lunchtime. So I learned not to really make a big deal of it, But still, I would not have survived in Zen if I hadn't had the good fortune of being at Naropa. And I got myself assigned as a student assistant when I was in the MFA writing program there. I thought, I'm scared of this guy. I should get myself assigned. You had to assign yourself to somebody as a student assistant. I thought, I'm going to assign to Daido. I'm scared of him. So he's the best person to assign myself to. And he didn't remember me, but he knew I was a serious Zen student. And he was there for more than 2 weeks. And he kept up the stern kind of Zen master exterior for about 3 days. But, I was taking him shopping, helping him do his laundry. I was just doing everything with him. And it broke down pretty quickly, and we started talking. And basically, we developed a friendship. It wasn't, he was always an elder and a mentor, but we developed a very warm personal relationship. And then Shishin Roshi was also coming and going from Boulder. And so I served as Daido's student assistant a lot over the years. And we'd have meals with Shishin when he was there and such. And so I got to have a warm relationship with Shishin and Shinko, and who, of course, there's plenty of room with Shishin Roshi and Shinko Roshi to share emotions. In fact, if any of you don't know, or haven't, if you do know but haven't read the book, The Great Heart Way, it's all about working with our emotional material and psychological material, and extremely, extremely useful. So things have moved on, I certainly have a warm relationship with both of them, and have had for even before I came and before Shishin Roshi became my primary teacher years later. I already knew him pretty well. So I want to do a little practice with you that deals a little more directly with the heart. It's like 5 minutes of practice, but I wonder how many people carry, kind of routinely, some sadness, anxiety at the current state of the world. How many people carry some emotion about that? Yeah, it can be hard to know how to deal with, right? And I got to say, my early instruction, which was just go back to the breath, I even knew at the time it wasn't sufficient. Fortunately, I'd done therapy and I knew that if emotions came up, that's part of my moment to moment experience and I needed to be with them and pay attention. Fortunately, this practice is designed to deal with exactly these kinds of anxieties, fears, sorrow, grief, the state of things, at the way the world is. Of course, the world's always been tough. That's what this practice was designed to deal with, dukkha, suffering, right? So I just want to show you a little practice. If you just go into your breath, as we're accustomed to do. And we're used to breathing into the hara, our center of gravity point, low in the abdomen. But for this purpose, can we feel the breath? Zazen's a physical practice. I've often said that. It's very good to get out of our heads physically and down into the physical body. Feel the physical body. So can we really feel the breath coming and going from the heart area, just center of the chest? It's easy to feel the breath. Can we really plug into the natural feeling of the heart? In the greater universe, physicists like Shishin Roshi will tell you that positive and negative energies exchange all the time. There's no problem. The universe doesn't judge what's good or bad or what's positive or negative. Is creation better than destruction? It's all just energy, right? Well, the heart actually has that very similar power. Can actually, if we allow ourselves to breathe into the heart, and as though we were sipping at the reservoir of anxiety or fear or grief, unease, stress, whatever we carry. You can imagine that on an inhale, we're drawing that without reservation into the heart. We can't get away from it anyway, right? We've all tried pushing away our emotions. It doesn't work. So what if we turn around and invite them into the heart, knowing that the heart, like the universe at large, has this power of taking what we see as negative, which is really just energy, and turning it and breathing it out as transforming it into compassion, love, positivity. This is similar to Tonglen practice in Tibetan practice. However, Tonglen practice doesn't deal with your personal suffering. It deals with the whole suffering of the world. I don't recommend taking on that practice without a guide who's familiar with it. In fact, Tibetan teachers will say that doing it for one's own pain is not real Tonglen. So great, it's not real Tonglen, but I can tell you it works for our pain. It works for our suffering. What if we just allow any pent-up, stuck energies? We allow on an inhale, allow that feeling of stuck energy to just release into the heart, and on an exhale, we just breathe it out and allow it to turn into positivity, love, compassion. In Tonglen, which is not what we're doing, as I've said, but there's a way to picture or feel dark energies as though they are dark storm clouds, heavy, dark, dense, thick. Breathe that into the heart, and then as we exhale, they transform to lightness, clarity, brightness, coolness in a positive way, just the right amount of coolness, or the right amount of slight warmth, but our heavy emotions can feel hot, like burning. So, and then inhale, just allowing ourselves to accept that into the heart, accepting the entire feeling in the body into the heart. In fact, we're so often holding tensions or tightness somewhere. And if we want to bring the heart into the practice, we need to bring it to ourselves, don't we? So inhaling in, can we accept that which we would rather avoid? Whether it feels like stuck energy, stuck dark emotion, tightness or holding in the body, just without a reservation. Let it come into the heart. On an inhale, on an exhale, breathe it out as lightness, positivity, kindness, loving kindness, love, compassion. Just give it away without reserve. The heart has this capacity, like kind of a magic mirror, to take the dark stuff and transform it. And thus we all know our suffering leads to compassion. We hear that, but this is a way it actually can actually practice that when we feel like we're carrying a lot and we can't get away from it. It's the human condition to suffer, right? Part of the human condition. Part of the human condition is to love. Inhale, letting that darker, heavier energy into the heart. And exhale, releasing. And the whole body releases and relaxes. At the end of the service today, Corin recited the basic metta instructions. May you be happy, may you be safe, may all beings be healthy, may all beings be at ease, may all beings be realized. So on the exhale, if you wish to, just to yourself repeat any of those phrases or add anything that feels appropriate. It's a way to kind of combine metta with transforming our own stuck places. Zazen is all about accepting what is, so we don't deny the body, we don't deny the emotions. We accept the entirety of the moment. But that doesn't mean we have to be burdened, ground down by it. What if we can just give it away, really turn it into compassion like we always hear we can do? The in-breath is accepting, the out-breath is releasing. We give away all our compassion, all our positivity and love. It refills from beneath. Don't worry. You don't have to hold any back. So for now, I'll just leave you to use that practice in the future as feels fit. Let's just come back to ordinary Dharma talk mode. Open our eyes if they've been closed. And we'll just finish up this talk and ruin that nice feeling by talking about it. So just because the universe doesn't make distinctions between creation and destruction, good and bad, let's not make the mistake of thinking it's cold and impersonal. You know, the old translations, if you ever read them, they would talk about the void. You know, they would often translate emptiness as the void, and it sounds kind of cold and impersonal and scary, but remember, we live in the universe, and not only us, but cats and dogs and other beings that love and that share love and warmth. There's plenty of heart, there's plenty of love in the universe. And where did it come from if not from the universe? Just because we're the perpetrators of it, in part. We didn't make it up, right? Our Buddha nature, the universe itself, has that in it. It has warmth, it has love in it. It's part of our practice. It's not impersonal. And if you look at humans, even the ones who seem evil and deluded, 99% of them at least seem to have something or someone that they love. Isn't it true? It's part of the baffling thing about humans, even really difficult, even humans who do horrible things. Somewhere else, in some other part of their being, they know love. Maybe it's even 100% of humans. You know, is going to exclude the narcissist, but maybe not. After all, they love themselves, you know, so they know love too. But I get concerned sometimes because we can strive in a way where we start to get caught in pushing our bodies, pushing ourselves. And Zen's a physical practice, and we have to go beyond our edges, of course, to our edges at least. But can we do that with showing compassion and warmth for the body, rather than having the attitude of ignoring it if it's hurting? You know, can we bring compassion to the vehicle of the body, to the messages it's trying to send us? Hey, this is uncomfortable, whatever. A lot of times, if we can use that heart practice with the body, imagine drawing into the heart that resistance or pain in the body and just releasing it as positivity. Very often, that part of the body will release, and whatever affliction it's carrying may get easier to bear. I can't promise it'll always vanish, but sometimes it will. I've had it happen many times, if we accept it. But Zen practice isn't about pushing away or ignoring. It's about accepting. Same thing with our minds. We need to be kind to our thinking minds. They're trying to send us messages. The brain's sending us messages it thinks are important. So we're not going to get caught up in them when we're meditating, of course. But we don't have to push them away, cut them off, be angry with them. We can just kindly say, not right now. I'm doing something else right now. I'll get back to you. You know, to the thinking voices that appear in our heads. But actually, where we work is where insight comes from, is gut level and heart level. Gut level is why we do the hara. You know, there are brain-like neurons. Probably you've all heard this. It's been proven there are brain-like neurons in the gut and in the heart, which is why sometimes the gut or the heart seems to know something that the brain doesn't. Insight or realization doesn't come from intellect, from words. We know this, we hear this, but it can help to actually practice the intelligence of the heart and the gut, the body. Because that the hara is where we find spiritual strength, drive, a certain kind of insight, but also the heart. That's where compassion lives, and that's where insight into the human condition lives. So please embody, drop out of the head into the body. That's one of the reasons why there's such emphasis on not knowing in practice. The head, the kind of knowing that comes from the head, from words, linear, intellectual thought. The brain only knows, it only repeats the stuff we know already. It recombines it in different ways. But if you want to be intimate with the great mystery, which is what we're doing in practice, it can't be, you can't use thought to get there. It comes through the heart, through the gut. We can't explain the great mystery of life, the meaning of life, but we can live into it through the heart, through the hara, through the body, through intuition. That inarticulate language of the heart and gut can speak volumes if we listen for it. It's quieter. So I encourage us to look for the heart in practice. That inarticulate wisdom, especially of the heart, it knows beyond knowing, and that's where we need to go in practice. Knowing beyond knowing. And thank you all for sharing this time.